Hello, hello.
Hello. Hi, Stacey. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Great. I'm so excited to talk to you, especially after doing the deep dive into you and your background and your music. I'm really excited for
Amazing.
this.
Me too.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and jump in.
Do
You've
it.
had a busy, what, couple of years? You went viral, you got a record deal, you launched a successful music career. Can you tell me about the training, dedication, and hard work that you put into your music before all of that?
I grew up in Quebec, so I'm Canadian, and there, you don't go like right to college. You kind of do a school before that where you get like an associate's degree. I don't know why they do it that way. That's just the way it is. So I did it. I did my 3-year program in jazz interpretation. And then I got my degree like right as COVID hit. And then I continued on then to like kind of go to college and get my bachelor's degree. So it's just like a step that you have to do before. And I was starting to post a lot more on social media starting in the summer of like 2020.
Yeah.
And then I started university in the fall. I was doing definitely more like cover stuff. Like I wasn't writing a lot yet, but I was still, like studying and like learning jazz things at school. And then at the end of 2020, I decided to take like, it started off as a semester off, but in my mind, I don't think I knew I was ever going back, at least in the immediate future. And then my video went viral like 2 weeks after that.
I want to focus on the jazz part. You're a jazz musician first and foremost, which not many people, especially in the pop world, can say. Does that help, having your background in jazz and even other music genres? Does that help when it comes to writing pop songs? Or do you kind of find that you have to kind of set aside a different part of your brain and set aside the training to come up with a pop hook?
Honestly, I would say it's a little bit of both because when I'm writing music, jazz is like always in my mind and I'm always thinking about it and like how I can put it into the song. But on the other hand, sometimes I'm like, whoa, I'm overthinking this. Whoa, I'm maybe making it a little too complicated. Just because I have that knowledge and I know it doesn't mean I like always need to use it, which I definitely like need to remind myself of sometimes. So I think it's just finding a balance, but I think it's also so cool because jazz just adds like the best like sauce to pop songs. It makes like an elevated pop song because there's like all these cool little musical moments.
Yes, I love that. Congratulations first off on your debut EP.
Thank you so much.
You have I Don't Know What Love Is. What was the experience like creating it?
It was kind of like an unforgettable time of my life because it was the first time I had ever been in LA for like longer than a week. I was living with a friend, so I was like really like in the LA like experience. Like I was living, in an apartment in LA for 3 weeks and then I was in the studio every day and we just wrote like every day I would be there with my producers and another songwriter would come in and we would write a song and at the end of that trip we had like 21 songs written, which is like crazy.
A lot.
And then like we were like, we have all these amazing songs, like we need to, do something with
Yeah.
them. So we're like, we compiled those 6 songs together because we were like, these are the ones that stand out the most. These are the ones that like we think are the most like unique and special. And then yeah, the EP was born kind of like that. We just kind of went through and chose the songs, not really with a rhyme or reason. But when we were trying to come up with the name, my friend Nina actually came up with it. We were in the car, like coming back from breakfast or something, and she was like, "Oh, like what about I don't know what love is?" And I was like, yes, we will put that into high consideration. And then it literally became the name of the EP. And after like more thought into like the songs, I kind of realized that there's not one like typical tried and true love song on the EP. They're all kind of about maybe like a relationship where like someone's feelings are unrequited or like friends with benefits. Like it's not just a regular schmegular love song. So I think calling it I don't know what love is cool because after you go through all these songs navigating like your emotions and love, at the end of the day, you still don't know what love is.
I actually didn't put those two together, and I love that. Especially with Fall in Love Alone. That really struck a chord with a lot of listeners, a lot of people. Let's talk about the inspiration behind that song.
I wrote that song with 2 amazing co-writers who have become really close friends of mine. And I remember being in the studio. I think that was like our third or fourth session in that month long session period. And I remember I was coming up with the chord progression first, and I'm like, wow, this feels like hopeful and like yearning sounding, kind of. And then I was writing about a time where I was like talking to this guy and we became really, really good friends. And I liked him and I didn't know how to tell him that. So this is kind of like if I could have sent him a song telling him how I felt, it would have been the one that I wrote, which didn't exist. It was just kind of me not knowing how he felt and if he felt the same way, like which so many people go through because you're maybe like too scared to say something or you're just gonna like not say anything because you don't want
Yeah.
to ruin it, like there's so many different variables. So yeah, I wasn't going through that at the time of writing it, but I just kind of like went back and like thought about how I felt back in that time and just kind of got the emotion from there.
And it's super relatable. And I mean, your music video for it just really like tugged on the heartstrings. It was like, oh, how was it recording it?
So I worked with an amazing, amazing director, Nina Kramer. She was the one who kind of like brought the idea to me about like the storyline and like the kids growing up. And then like I remember at the end of our chat, I was like, there needs to be like a plot twist at the end or something. And then so we came up with the idea that he like didn't really meet his long lost love, it was just kind of like an illusion. It was someone else, or he dreamed the whole thing. And I remember being on set. I wasn't in too much of the filming because it's not like I'm not one of the main characters.
Mm-hmm.
So I just did my little performance shot and I was in the background of some of I mean, I still ended up being there all day, but I wasn't like in the car with them, like shooting all the scenes. I didn't really have too much of an idea of what they were filming. All I knew is that it was going to look amazing and it does. And I'm so proud of it. I think it's like it still blows my mind that like I'm a part of that.
Another great track, Deep End. Now, is that a song that started with a hook and you fit lyrics into it, or is it the other way around?
I remember that day being a little bit like chaotic, like in a good way, because I think we were like six people in the writing room. So I remember there being like a buzz, like an energy. And I think that's where like that fun, like summery sound kind of came out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we definitely came up with like the before putting lyrics in it because we're like, oh, this sounds cool. And then fitting the lyrics in afterwards was kind of like the challenge. But I worked with Rabel and Skylar Stone Street, who are two other like amazing writers. And I just remember the vibe, like we were like, let's just write a summer like song about like not being tied down and like making sure you've experienced everything before you settle down, which is like maybe not something that I've ever gone through. But sometimes when you get into the writing room and you start like the song just kind of feeds you a story that you like flesh out. Like it's not necessarily, oh, I broke up with my boyfriend yesterday, let's write about it, which a lot of the time, sure it is. But that one, it was just more of like a vibe that everyone kind of felt.
And you can feel it too. So when you record a song that has like a strong melody, how much room do you like to give yourself to add some of your impressive vocal improv on top of it?
On the day that we're writing the song, I try to keep it like pretty like as is because like the song's very fresh. I have just learned it. We just wrote it. It's just like been birthed. So I want to like try to keep it kind of like just kind of how it would be if like we just wrote it that day, which we did. And then going back in, like if I were to go re-record the vocals, like if we were fleshing it out, producing it, then I would go over and like still keep it pretty much true to what I did on the day of, but then add the flavor,
Mhm.
try new things. Maybe it doesn't work out. Like just because you want to have more than like not enough, when you're like going through and editing and like picking like which like I don't know, in a sentence there could be one word you didn't like and then you go in the 15 other takes and you're like, hey, this word sounds better, and you just like chop it and put it in there. What you do in the studio can oftentimes like be like a big, or like what you hear in the final product of a song can be a collage of like a bunch of different like takes from here and from there and from the day that we wrote it or the day that I recorded professional like vocals. So it kind of depends where the sauce comes out. Maybe sometimes it's at the beginning, sometimes it's later down the line, but it will always be there.
Yeah, let's talk over tonight. How much do you try to diversify the feel of your songs while still maintaining a similar vibe to your music?
I want to create a sound that's unique to me, but that has a lot of different like facets in it. So I'm not like caged into one thing. And I feel like Over Tonight is a really good example of that because it's pretty different sounding from like my other things. It's a little like I don't want to say darker in a bad way, but just kind of more like more cool, like sexier, like just with like the tone of the music and like the lyrics. So
Mhm.
I feel like that one was, I wouldn't say a step out of my comfort zone, but just like a step away from what I think people like not expect of me, but have heard of me, like have heard from me before. But that's what's the amazing thing about being an artist and like trying new things because like that's my favorite song. That's my favorite song that I've ever written, that I've ever gotten to do. I think it's just so special and like unique sounding. I feel like not a lot of people are doing that kind of stuff today. So, like I love that song with my whole heart. And I think it's just like, it's iconic.
And you gained so much exposure and had so much success via social media. Was that something that you were always striving for originally? And how important is maintaining the connection with your fans, especially the ones who've been with you since day one?
I mean, I started social media. I definitely didn't expect it to become like my basically my full-time job at the start, when I was like fresh into quarantine and just like playing guitar in my basement, like I totally did not think that in a year's time I would be going to LA for the first time, like meeting my manager and producer. But I definitely just really enjoyed like sharing my music and having people connect with me, like even that early on to like when I started posting on like TikTok and YouTube. So when, like, when I signed my record deal and like started writing songs and then started having to promote them, it definitely changes how you look at your social media page because now like you really, really rely on it, maybe more than you did before. Cause like that's your only way to connect with your audience, to tell them, hey, I have new songs coming out. Hey, I have a tour going on. So now it became more than a job than it was before. But like that's not a bad thing. That's just kind of how it is, especially in the music industry today. Like social media plays a huge role. People could say it's for better or for worse, but it plays a huge role in like getting your music out there today. I have a lot of experience, just kind of navigating the different platforms because I've seen them and I've been on them for a while. But, I think just staying consistent is probably the key and also like a really hard thing to do, especially like I was just on tour for 2 months and I was living in a bus with 10 people. So like finding a moment alone to like try to make content was like really, really difficult. And I also just wanted to like live in the moment of the tour, but like I obviously just can't not post on Instagram for 7 weeks just because, like when you said like social media is about connecting with your audience, that's the thing, you got to stay on top of it. You got to make sure they know that you're still like you're out there, you're working on it, you're making new music because that's all they really want. They just want to see stuff from you, and it's like it's kind of a give and take. Like you have to put in the work, but then your audience also has to like show up and be there. So just because you post something once doesn't mean that everyone that follows you has seen it. And also just know like that the numbers, and this is like the hardest to wrap your head around, like the numbers are not indicative of how good your content is or the quality of it. And it's so easy to fall down that rabbit hole while being like, oh, well, no one's watching my videos, they must be bad or something. But just like see the people that show up for you still. And then just like, be consistent. Just don't let the numbers going down, let that affect you because as soon as they go down, they'll come back up. That's just the way like the algorithm goes.
So, what do you envision for the future of Stacey Ryan?
I mean, lots of things. I can't wait to go on my first headline tour, like my first long headline tour. Like I feel like it's going to be just because I just came off one, not that I was the headliner, but just seeing the headliner perform and all his fans that came to see him, Jake Wesley Rogers, who I just went on tour with, it was like so amazing. And I'm like, I can't wait to do that for me. I can't wait to put out a full length album. I know my EP just came out and I love this body of work so much and it'll always be very important to me, but we're already working on the next album and I can tell you the songs are awesome.
Nice.
So I'm excited for that. This year is already so like I'm checking off so many things off my bucket list that like I would have never even thought. So like, just kind of live in the moment. Don't get too like caught up on just kind of like make sure you take everything in because life goes by so fast.